Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Apalachicola Chattahoochee Flint River Basin Drought Assessment Webinar for the month of September. My name is Rachel McGuire, and I'm with the Auburn University Water Resources Center located in Auburn, Alabama. If you're new to the webinar, just a few housekeeping things I'd like to address. We'll have time for comments, questions, and discussion at the end of the webinar. So please save your questions till the end. However, you can use the question box on the GoToMeeting tool panel during the presentation if you would like. We'll just wait to address those at the end. You can also use the raise your hand tool by pushing the hand icon on that same tool panel. And let me introduce today's speakers to everybody. First, we'll have David Zierden, the Florida State climatologist at the Florida Climate Center at Florida State University. He'll speak with us on our current drought status as well as our seasonal forecasts and outlooks. We have Tom Littlepage of the Alabama Office of Water Resources, where he is the branch chief. He'll give us the state of Alabama input. We also have Paul Anghorn, a hydrologist with the USGS South Atlantic Water Science Center. He'll be speaking about our stream flows and groundwater conditions. We have Troy Ephraim, an environmental engineer with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Mobile District, to speak with us about our current reservoir conditions. And last, we'll have Jeff Dober of the National Weather Service Southeast River Forecast Center, speaking with us about our stream flow forecast for the ACF. Speakers, give me a cue when you're ready for your next slide, and remember to unmute yourselves. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our first speaker, David Zierden.
All right, thank you, Rachel, and good afternoon, everyone. We're going to go ahead and begin this month's webinar by taking a closer look at this extremely active and wacky Atlantic hurricane season that we're in the midst of right now. This satellite image is from this morning on the top left, and it's really a spectacular image. It shows Hurricane Teddy up threatening Nova Scotia, and Teddy has merged with an extratropical low and completed transition to extratropical in nature, but it's still a very large and powerful storm, and we can expect impacts to Nova Scotia. But you can also see the trailing cold front goes all the way down into the southern Atlantic and across Cuba, where that yellow X marks the area of interest that the National Hurricane Center is monitoring for possible development. Not very good probability right now at this time. But then as we follow this front across the Gulf of Mexico, it ends up ending at Tropical Storm Beta that made landfall on the Texas coast this morning and is causing a lot of flooding in the Houston area right now. So all that's going on with what's almost one big continuous system. Then way over in the Eastern Atlantic, we have the zombie storm, Paulette, which struck Bermuda 8 days ago, I believe it was. Well, it traveled all the way to the North Atlantic and then back south again. And now it's undergone a transition from extratropical back into a warm core tropical storm, and it's being monitored. So just a really unusual event. On the next slide, we'll see all this is just happening today, but it's just a string of unusual events. And that includes, we had 2 tropical storms form in the month of May before the official beginning of the hurricane season. And that makes 6 consecutive years now with the preseason storm before that official June 1st start date. We had a subtropical storm Alpha that formed right off the coast of Portugal and actually made landfall in Portugal. Just last week, we had the tropical cyclone in the Mediterranean Sea, Metacane, if you will, that impacted Greece. And we also had 2 tropical systems in the Gulf of Mexico at the same time, which is only the third time in modern record that that's happened. So a lot of other weirdness going on this tropical season. On the next slide, we'll take a look more at the numbers of tropical storms and hurricanes. Right now, we're at 23 tropical storm strength systems so far this season. Each of the storms from the letters E through beta were the earliest for that letter of the alphabet on record. Those 23 storms, we had 9 landfalls in the United States, 4 of which were hurricane strength, and of course, Hurricane Laura was a major hurricane. And last month, we talked about how, even though we're having a record-setting number of storms, that the accumulated cyclone energy was actually closer to normal. Well, with this spate of recent storms over the last week or so, accumulated cyclone energy has now really caught up and now is approaching the seasonal average for the entire season. And we still got a long way to go to finish this tropical season. So on the next slide, we'll just review. It was one of the most active hurricane forecasts that the NOAA's Climate Prediction Center has ever issued, and we've certainly lived up to it. We're already at nearly the top of the range for a number of named storms and hurricanes. However, we have only had 2 major hurricanes this year, Hurricane Laura and Hurricane Teddy. So one little bright spot in this very, very active season. So on the next slide, we'll just review what the climatology of the tropical season looks like. Now for the last third of September, we see that the main development region in the Atlantic between the Azores and Lesser Antilles is a center for development, but also now the Western Caribbean and Southern Gulf of Mexico is also a hot spot for development, and storms that form here are much more likely to impact the Northern Gulf Coast and the ACF Basin. So we'll keep our eye down to the south of us. And also just a reminder, we are in the climatological peak of hurricane activity right now through the month of September and into October. So on the next slide, we'll switch gears and we'll start talking about drought, why we're here. And there's really no large or organized areas of drought anywhere in the Southeast United States. We see some patches of D0 or abnormally dry, but that's fairly typical of summer convective rain, especially over inland in Alabama and Georgia, where some areas will get more rain and some other areas will get left out. So very typical for summer precipitation. And also with the remnants of Tropical Storm Beta making their way towards northern Alabama and northern Georgia, we can expect to see some drought improvement along with the very heavy rainfall from Hurricane Sally taking care of southeast Alabama and southwest Georgia and the Baldwin County Mobile area. Those should be off the map this week. So on the next slide, we'll take a look. This really shows the recent rainfall very well. It's University of Alabama Huntsville's Lawn and Garden Moisture Index. It shows swath of very moist conditions from Mobile and Baldwin County up through southeast Alabama and central Georgia. But there is a very sharp gradient or line that separates the areas that missed the rain from Hurricane Sally in northwest Alabama. So there's still some drought concerns there. Hopefully this next system, remnants of beta, will help alleviate some of that dryness. On the next slide, we'll take a look at recent rainfall over the past 7 days, and this really shows you the very heavy amounts from Hurricane Sally along the western Florida Panhandle and Alabama's Baldwin County. Everywhere in purple is accumulations of 15 inches or more. There was even one CocoRa's report of more than 30 inches in the western Florida Panhandle with Hurricane Sally. So very heavy rainfall. Certainly will go a long way towards alleviating those patches of drought in southern Alabama and southern Georgia. On the next slide, we'll take a look a little further back at rainfall accumulations over the last 30 days. And again, you can see the impact of Hurricane Sally. And you can also see the more scattered or patchy nature of recent rainfall across southeast Georgia and also northern Alabama. So on the next slide, we'll take a look even further back. And these are 90-day departures from normal now, rainfall estimates, their departure from the climatological normal. And now we see with the recent rainfall, almost all areas of the ACF are running above normal for the last 3 months. Again, very heavy amounts over the western Florida panhandle. So with that, we'll go to the next slides and start looking ahead. Our 7-day quantitative precipitation forecast does show the projected path of the remnants of Tropical Storm Beta, forecast to bring 3 to maybe 5 inches of rainfall across northern Georgia and northern Alabama. However, the middle and lower ACF basin should be quite a bit drier. Then on the next slide, we have the other big news of this month's webinar is that a week or so ago, NOAA did declare that we are now firmly in La Nina conditions, and they issued a La Nina advisory. This satellite image shows current sea surface temperature departures from normal and a very well-developed cold tongue along the equator in the Pacific Ocean. Our familiar Nino 3.4 index is now down to around a full degree below normal, so that's well past the half-degree threshold for La Nina conditions. On the next slide, now that we have La Nina conditions in place, this shows the subsurface ocean temperatures across the equator, and over on the left shows the most recent week, and very good support at depth for continued colder than normal ocean temperatures along the equator. So with that in mind, on the next slide, this is the official forecast now. It changed quite a bit from last month. Now there's nearly 80% chance that La Nina conditions will continue through the fall, the October, November, December time period, and well into the winter season. Kind of the latest that I've heard is they're looking like it might be a quick end to this La Nina once we get into the early spring, February and March, but we'll wait and see how things develop there. And over on the right just shows the different forecast models, and most of them are favoring La Nina conditions through the fall and into the winter. So on the next slide, that brings the next big question. The top graphic just shows the typical wintertime temperature and precipitation patterns when we're in La Nina conditions. And as we're all familiar, here in the southeast, it tends to bring us a warmer and dry winter season. The big question is, when exactly will this pattern set in? And on the bottom, I have the composite La Nina rainfall analysis for the months of September, October, and November. And we see in September, there can actually be enhanced rainfall along the northern Gulf Coast. Really not much of a signal at all in the month of October. It's not until we get into December that we start to see that dry pattern the month of November, when we really start to see that dry pattern set in. So let's dig a little deeper on the next slide and see what we can expect when exactly this dry pattern will set in. This shows October rainfall departures from normal for our last 3 La Nina episodes. On the top left is 2007, which shows mostly near normal rainfall for October of 2007, a little excess along the northern Gulf Coast. In October of 2016, it was much the opposite. where the entire southeast and ACF basin received little to no rainfall at all during the month of October. Some areas went 2 months or more without any measurable precipitation. So the La Nina dryness set in early in 2016, but then in 2017, not so much, actually above normal rainfall across a lot of the ACF. So October's a mixed bag, and we really can't say when this dry pattern will start. Certainly not before the month of, we won't be more certain until the month of November. So with that in mind, we'll take a look at the official 1 and 3 month precipitation outlooks from NOAA's Climate Prediction Center. And the 1 month outlook for the month of October, they actually go against this La Nina trend and predict above or increased chances of above normal rainfall for the state of Florida and parts of Georgia. The reasoning there is that this continued active tropical season will lead to more rainfall and will override any La Nina impacts. And looking at the 3 month outlook for October through December, they do show equal chances for precipitation over Florida and Georgia, but a little bit of that drying tendency is slipping into Alabama. So on the next slide, we'll wrap up with the seasonal drought outlook. And since there's no real drought anywhere in the tri-state area, there's really no forecast for worsening or development. So we'll go ahead and wrap up with my summary points. The 2020 hurricane season continues at a record pace, and now even accumulated cyclone energy is well ahead of normal. Small pockets of abnormally dry appear and disappear over the tri-state area throughout the summer, but that's very typical of our scattered summertime convection. Rainfall is now above normal at all time scales out to 90 days across much of the area and all of the ACF basin. The 7-day forecast is for heavy rain across northern Alabama and Georgia. We are now in La Nina conditions and under a La Nina advisory, and 80% chance that it will continue through fall and into the winter months. And of course, we continue with the extremely active hurricane season. The CPC outlooks, the 1 month forecast favors above normal rainfall, certainly for the state of Florida, but the 3 month forecast is more in line with the warm and dry that we'd expect from La Nina. And the ACF is likely to remain mostly drought free in the short term, but we'll have to watch for the onset of this winter dry pattern.
Thank you very much, David. And now I'd like to turn it over to Tom Littlepage for the state of Alabama input.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. Go ahead. So basically, well, I guess I forgot to take animations out of that. Anyway, what you see here is last week's map, which we will show, which should show some significant improvement over this week's map. Go ahead. One of the things that we are fortunate with our process is we're able to factor in forecasts. So the foresight of our technical advisory process, we felt like it was going to see improving conditions relative to drought. And so as a result, when we modified our drought declaration, we were able to remove any drought advisory levels. And so obviously, I think this will continue into the near term. Next slide. But one of the things we're continuing to do is update conditions on our website. So I like to put this in there to refer people to updated information. We just don't sit idle between meetings, but we're providing continuous updates of streamflow conditions and any changes to the drought declaration process. Okay. And essentially the wrap up here, and David did a great job kind of summarizing where we're at, and certainly it's relative to the conditions in Alabama. Hurricane Sally made a significant impact in terms of, I guess you could argue, being a drought killer for large portions of the southern and southeastern portion of the state. And then Tropical Storm Beta that's coming through, again, as David alluded to, is projecting anywhere from 4 to 7 inches across the northern portion of the state over the next 5 to 7 days. So we should see significant improvement to even the little bit of drought that is depicted on this week's map. And as David also alluded to, the La Nina conditions are set up, and as John Christie continues to remind me, the La Nina setup is it's most critical during the springtime events in Alabama, or springtime season in Alabama. So we'll obviously be watching very carefully to see how those conditions set us up, because we are due for a period of drought. We've been fortunate over the past couple of years, but it's something we're continuing to monitor. And I guess with that, you can go to the last slide. Be glad to take any questions. Oh yeah, we have our ongoing next meeting. Sorry about that. Coming up on October the 20th. So if anybody's interested in sitting on that, just please let me know. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Now I'd like to turn it over to Paul Inkhorn for our stream flow and groundwater conditions.
Hi, Rachel. Yep, good afternoon, everybody. So we'll begin by looking at the network of real-time streamflow stations across the Southeast. So each one of these pixels or dots is a real-time streamflow station, and they're updated within the past hour. So you can see, a big change from our last webinar for sure, but the recent effects of Hurricane Sally are still being seen. A lot of the gauges in South Alabama and the Panhandle, Southeast Georgia are really still running at high conditions or much above normal. So certainly we saw a change in flow and much relief. So conditions in North Georgia and North Alabama are pretty much running at normal conditions, with a smattering of lower flow stations at below normal or much below normal. But that band also, it continues up through North and South Carolina there. So streams are flowing active right now for sure. Next slide. This is the below normal 7-day average stream flow. So most current conditions are on the lower graph there. And as you can see, no hydrologic drought in the ACF, and just couple of basins showing up in northern Alabama there as being abnormally or below normal. So good news. All right, next slide, we'll move along. These are the 28-day average stream flows. So the black line there is showing the previous 28-day average. So it's a moving average, and then it's ranked with historical observations. So Chattahoochee River, Cornelia, and Dahlonega, these are the main inflows into Lanier. And as you can see, uptick there, moving into the much above normal conditions for 28-day average flow. So that's good news for Lanier if they can maintain full pool. Next slide. We'll start moving further down the basin here, Chattahoochee River at Atlanta and Whitesburg. So Atlanta is currently ranked in normal conditions, and Whitesburg just crossed over into much above normal 28-day average flow. Next slide. Further downstream again at West Point and Columbus, where both stations there are showing 28-day average flow to be ranking much above normal. All right, the next slide, we'll switch over to the Flint River. So Flint River there at Griffin is heading towards, well, it's currently much above normal, may create a new extreme. But I guess with the tail end now, I expect flows to start receding, and we'll see that black line start to move back towards normal conditions. Carsonville there also ranking much above normal. Next slide. So I wanted to point out here, at Albany and Bainbridge. But the next slide actually shows it a little better, so wait for that. But both stations there are currently in much above normal. Well, Bainbridge, you can see there, I mean, so it doesn't take us back very far. Just a year ago, we were actually creating a new extreme just into the month of October there, but roughly around the same time frame. Bainbridge, we were generating a new daily or 28-day average low flows. So we've come a long way in a year. Right now, again, just to reiterate, we're showing much above normal there. So Flint River has recovered nicely. The next slide. Apalachicola River at Chattahoochee. This is the last station that we show along the basin there, and 28-day average flow is ranked at much above normal. All right, and we'll start looking at groundwater conditions. So our current conditions there are pretty much the gambit from much below normal with a station in the basin ranking is high, and then a majority of the sites are currently ranked as normal, but we're seeing conditions anywhere from much below normal to much above normal. So we'll take a look at the two circled stations, which are sites that we go to each month. This is Miller County. So you can see in the past few days there, this well has really increased in elevation, is currently ranking much above normal. And the next slide, look at Doherty County. So again, there we're seeing a good increase in well depth. So that's currently right hovering on the 90th percentile there for groundwater conditions. All right, the next slide, we'll just wrap it up there. So real-time stream flow in the ACF basin is currently ranking from high to a couple of sites showed up as much below normal, as they usually do due to regulation. The ACF basin is currently ranked as normal for the 7-day average stream flow. 28-day average stream flow for the Chattahoochee River currently ranked from normal to much above normal. And that's the same for the Flint River Basin. The 28-day average is flowing from above normal to much above normal. And then, as I just showed, real-time groundwater levels for the basin range from low to high, with a majority of the stations in the normal range. So plenty of water out there. Thank you, Rachel.
Thanks, Paul. Now I'd like to turn it over to Troy Ephraim with our ACF reservoir conditions.
Hey, Rachel, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, perfect. All right, so we'll start with Lake Lanier. Current elevation is 1071.62, and we're about 0.62 feet above guide curve right now. And that's from the tropical system that moved through last week. We're working to get it back down to guide curve over the next couple of weeks. Next slide. At West Point, current elevation 634.93. There was a spike in the pool up to about 636 from Hurricane Sally that moved through, but we've worked to get it back down to guide curve, and we'll stay right near the top of conservation over the next few weeks. Next slide. At Walter F. George, current elevation 185.96, and we've lowered the pool elevation back down to about 186 for them to do the dam repairs. And we had a good spike from Hurricane Sally as well, where it rose up almost to about 190, but we've gotten it back down here pretty quickly. And we'll be at that 186 elevation for about 6 weeks while they do the construction. Next slide. At Jim Woodruff, the current elevation is 77.14. We were seeing a little bit discharge right now. It's still about 45,000. And that's still because, like mentioned before, we've seen some pretty above normal flows from the Flint River down at near the bottom of the ACF basin. Next slide. This is the ACF Basin Composite Conservation and Flood Storage. We're in Zone 1. We spiked up from the hurricane, but we've gotten it back down, and we project to stay in Zone 1 over the next few weeks. Next slide. In summary, inflows into the project are returning to normal after the tropical system that moved through. West Point and Lanier are operating just slightly above guide curve, and we anticipate they'll be back down over the next few weeks. The Water of Georgia is drawn down to 186 for the upstream repairs until November 1st. And like I said, we'll be approaching guide curve over the next few weeks. And the ACF system conservation storage is in Zone 1, and we project that it'll stay there over the next few weeks.
Thank you, Troy. Now I'd like to turn it over to our last speaker today, Jeff Dover, with our Streamflow forecast.
All righty, thank you, Rachel, and thank you, Troy. And here's our Streamflow forecast, our 1 month forecast. And this is based on all the information that David and Paul and Troy and Tom all presented. We're calling for near normal flows across the ACF basin for the month of October. Now, as Paul pointed out, we're above normal across most of these points. And a lot of those flows came up very quickly with the quick runoff that we got from Hurricane Sally. And we think as we go into early October, we'll see those flows start to fall off fairly quickly. As quickly as they rose, we should see them fall off fairly quickly into the first part of October and come back towards normal. Now, the caveat with this is tropical systems during the month of October. If we get a tropical system once again, then we'll end up being above normal, depending on which parts of the basin get the rainfall. But as long as we're pushing into that La Nina period, as David pointed here in the heading into the fall, we should trend drier as we go into late October and have those stream flows fall back to normal by late October. As far as the 3 month forecast, again, slight adjustments from our last forecast. This is now October, November, December through the end of the year. And we're calling for near normal, again, the same trends, the same reasons that I talked about. As with the La Nina forecast, we are looking for a drier forecast heading into the winter time and for the late fall period. And so we're going to trend toward near normal stream flows across all the ACF. You can see the pie charts sort of hinting at about a 40% chance of above normal, 40% chance of near normal, and a 20% chance or 15% chance of below normal. So that gives you an indication how we're teetering between that near normal and above normal levels for the streamflow forecast going into the first part of the winter period here in December. So that's the streamflow forecast based on all the information you've just heard. Again, near normal for both the 1 month and 3 month, but there's some caveats to that. If anything, I would say we're going to be in the higher range of normal, closer to the above normal, than of course below normal. And that's the forecast for the next 3 months.
Thank you, Jeff. And now I'd like to open it up to anyone who may have questions, comments, or any discussion they'd like to address. You can type your question in the question box, or you can use the raise your hand icon.
Hi, Rachel, this is David Zierden again.
Yes.
One thing that I failed to mention is that when we get set into that typical wintertime La Nina pattern, the storm track actually goes up the Mississippi and Tennessee River valleys and into Ohio River Valley is where the storm track sets up. And so that often leads to a situation where extreme northern Alabama and northwest Georgia actually get enhanced rainfall, where further south we get the below normal rainfall. And it's a very tough call from year to year, just where that gradient between enhanced rainfall and below normal rainfall will set up. So that's something else we'll have to watch as we go through the fall and into winter.
Okay, thanks for that clarification, David. So I'll give just a little more time if there are any questions for them to come through. All right. Let's see, we do have one question. I'm wondering if there are measurements for nitrogen and phosphorus in the basin, and this is coming from Jennifer Paredes. Are any of our speakers able to speak to that question, if there are measurements or I guess data sets available that may measure nitrogen or phosphorus in the basin?
Rachel, this is Jeff from the Southeast River Forecast Center. I'm not aware of any, but you know, I'm not in tune with those measurements either. And I don't know if the U.S. Geological Survey, if they do any of that kind of water measuring.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I was, thanks, Jeff. I was just about to speak up on that. I know USGS has ongoing sampling efforts throughout the basin. There are various programs and projects that are currently collecting, you know, actual samples. I don't believe we have any real-time analysis going on, but the data are available through NWIS. Just on our web server there, our database, you should be able to find various data sets across. You can also reach out to me. My email is up on the link somewhere. I'm looking, but I can be easily found, and I can direct you to the various project leads and managers that could help you out with that.
Also, there was a comment, Jason Garwood says that they collect monthly nutrients in the lower river. I'm assuming he's referring to the lower Flint and also the Apalachicola River and the Apalachicola Bay. Also, Pam Knox commented on, depends on if you're needing air, water, or soil measurements. I guess I was just assuming that those were water measurements being asked about. And let's see, Mark Vincent commented about sharing information about the October Alabama drought meeting mentioned by Tom. Yes, I will include that information in the follow-up email, and that's also able to be located online on the Alabama Office of Water Resources website. And then Dawn Tonsmuir asks, is the average curve line on the USGS and NOAA gauges on the Apalachicola indicative of normal flows? I would direct that to Paul, I would assume.
Yeah, so he's talking about the 28-day average moving.
That's
curve.
what I implied, Dan, if that's correct, just.
Yeah, just they from without bringing up the slides again, but they were showing that the 28-day average flow was into the much above normal. Sorry, I don't exactly have the exact scale and region, but yeah, I mean, flows for the 28-day average in Chattahoochee are certainly much above the normal range or above normal range for the period.
Does that answer your question, Dan? Okay. Any other questions? Let's see, I've got Dan raise his hand. Can you speak now, Dan? Dan, or did you want to speak? I was trying to unmute you. I'm not sure if it's working.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, now I can. Sorry, I think we might have had a mute battle going on where I was unmuting you at the same time.
You did. That's okay. So on like the Bluntstown gauge that NOAA puts out, and usually on the USGS gauge, they have a little triangular line or it's made of small triangles that says the average flow for that time of year. That's what I was referring to when I was saying the average flow. And I assume that was some historical line, but I just wasn't sure if that's the same as what you're calling normal flows, or that range of normal flows is about there.
Yeah, so that triangle is it's an average of that daily flow for the period of record for that particular gauge. And so if you're looking at the real time, that daily average will show up as a triangle, and then the hydrograph that you're looking at will be, referenced, or it will be a separate number from that. So and I'm not looking at the gauge, you're talking about Blountstown, is that what we call Chattahoochee, Apalachicola Chattahoochee?
No, it's I understand what you're saying now. Yes, the Bluntstown gauge used to be USGS, and I think NOAA may be running it now, or maybe the Corps is. I'm not sure, but you answered my question. I was just trying to make sure that little diamond made up or triangular line was pretty much the same as normal flows for this time of year, and I think you said yes.
Yes, you're correct, Dan.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Paul. And if we don't have any other questions coming in, I haven't seen any new ones in a couple minutes. I want to thank all of our speakers that we have today. David Zierden from the Florida Climate Office, Tom Littlepage from the Alabama Office of Water Resources, Paul Ancorn from the USGS South Atlantic Water Science Center, Troy Ephraim from the Mobile District Army Corps of Engineers, and Jeff Dober of the Southeast River Forecast Center. Our next briefing will be Tuesday, October 27th at 1 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Central. A video recording of this webinar will be posted online on the NIDIS YouTube channel within 24 to 48 hours. And I will also be sending a follow-up email with a condensed version of this briefing to include any of the information we talked about today. Thank you for being here, everyone, and have a good rest of your day.
Thanks, Rachel.
Thanks, Rachel.